Okay, so on to turn 7, starting with the Allied reinforcements. Now, these 4 units are the one that will be delayed, and none of that is eligible for Europe, thankfully. So we can deploy these Chinese delayed ones, as well as these Marines and all these beautiful carrier units. Let's see what we can do with those beautiful devices. So until next turn, we wouldn't mind some agreement, is my comment. Now the Marines will be deployed onto Biak, along with Essex, Bunker Hill. No, actually Bunker Hill will be deployed to Hollandia. Bellewood will be deployed to Kepang. Then there's Kaupens onto Bougainville and Sangam onto Darwin. The Chinese army would very much like to occupy Rangoon, but this would mean overstack. So this is technically illegal. I should have placed those to Mandalay, not that it will matter a whole lot. Rather Dhaka, because this is a port, or Kunming. Now, in this turn he is receiving a reduced Kaio brought back to Hong Kong, and possibly he can later on expend some naval replacements to fix it if he so wishes. And he's also receiving one army unit in Bangkok, as well as an air unit which he is deploying onto Jolo. Now time for our replacements. We are restoring this one to full strength, and the Chinese army, which of course will have to be moved from here. Now this one, long-range bomber, will be restored onto Baka, and Lexington will be returned to Kavieng. As for the Japanese replacements, now he's in the unusual state of being able to use a whole lot of. He has 2 of its naval replacements and their replacement, and he can use up to 2 ground replacements from China. Let's see what he does. So, Japanese divisions reduced to 2. Korean army is restored to full strength. So he will be restoring his air unit at Ponape. You see, this is one of the units that can receive the air replacement. It is not a pre-war one. Kwajalein as well is what he is spending his replacements on, although this is illegal. Funnily enough, Japanese players are used to having their 10 strength units being able to receive replacements, which is mostly true because this is the units they receive along the course of the game as reinforcements. The exception is their elite ones, which are pre-war units and cannot receive replacements, which represents how hard it was for Japan to restore their elite pilots from the early stages of the war. But funnily enough, although this one is a 10 strength air force, this is a pre-war unit. This cannot receive replacements. So let's just keep in mind that this is not allowed, what Jules did here. So he's saving his naval replacements, so let's go for the submarine warfare. He's rolling an 8, so he's safe from my subs. We're at turn 7, so he will not lose any more cards. He will draw 6 for his resources, and that's it. 1 pass. Amazing. So he's not preempting me by having 6 cards against my 7, so it's our turn. So drawing a 7 cards hand, and this time we've got the following cards. Operation Sandcrab-Cottage. There's a problem with this card. If there is at least one Japanese occupied Aleutian Islands hex in Alaska, then we must play this as an event to declare a battle on Alaska against a Japanese unit, or we have to discard this card. There is no way that we play it as OC offensive or any other kind of event if Alaska is occupied. So good thing that these guys died because of Operation Vengeance and resulting in them being out of supply. So Alaska is free now. We can do whatever we want. So we've also got Submarine Attack Darter Days, which is really cool because it happens prior to combat. It may result in 1 or 2 naval steps of the Japanese being destroyed. Although I wonder the Japanese are going to declare any air-naval battle at this stage of the game. Then we've got Quadrant Conference, which at last ends our inter-service rivalry. A really cool card. So then we've got Vinegar Joe Stilwell, which is a good addition to our SIAC possibilities. We can use that to further push onto the CBI. This is a China offensive, which we will be using as an OC1. This is a heroic repair, which can net us 2 naval replacements to be used immediately, although this would have been more useful earlier in the game. And as for Curtis LeMay, this would instead be more useful later on in the game, at the stage when we have B-29 long-range bombers that can strategically bomb Japan and reduce his hand. So one card that has been drawn a little bit too late, one card that has been drawn a little bit too early, and the rest are interesting cards, so let's see what we do with those. There's actually one more hard turn that we have to go through, which is turn 7, because we still have to capture 4 hexes for progress of war requirements, with some decent forces but not anything really big, and with a +1 die roll modifier, which starting next turn will become +3. Also, our war in Europe level is pretty low still, so we will have to raise it at some point, possibly. Now, let's see how we start. We start with Quadrant Conference as an event. This is a military event, which means if he possibly plays a weather, the effect will be cancelled along with whatever we do from an operational perspective. So, in addition, we can immediately construct the Jarhat Trans route, but if this is already constructed, then we can construct Ledo or Imphal, so this may net as the construction of the Imphal road for free. And we can only activate air and ground units, logistic value of 3, let's go. So, we are building the road, and then we've got SIAC with 4 activations. We've got the Australians, we've got the Indians, we've got the Chinese, or rather the long-range bombers, and some more long-range bombers. So, we're moving this one here, and you know what's coming next. With a 3 OC value card we can reach Hanoi and hopefully fulfill our dream of securing a supply-eligible port to possibly move our SIAC headquarters there next and hopefully start clawing our way through the Chinese coastline and onto Japan as the British. Then the Indians will move here for a movement point cost of 2, and they can keep moving hopefully towards here. And then we've got the long-range bombers and the long-range bombers, which will attempt to secure a hit onto Kaio. If you notice closely, this is a 6 hex range. So now trouble starts to appear for the Japanese. So that's the one battle, and the rest is ground movement. Let's see what Jules is doing about that. And as expected, he likes that inter-service rivalry, and he plays a weather card as an event. So, good thing is that he expends that card, he has got 1 card less, and this is early on in the turn, so he might not be able to undo some subsequent operations on our part. Bad thing is we're still in rivalry. The Americans will not be able to coordinate their actions for much longer. And then he's expanding one of his passes. So, on to Allied play, number 2. Now, we are playing Slim's Burma offensive as an event. Just noting these 2 units should have been in Madras in Colombo. This would be the correct display because of the weather, and the Indians should be back, but no worries. So, now we are playing the promised Slim's Burma offensive, which will be played as an event and subsequently being removed from the game. We are receiving the 7th Armored Brigade in supply Indian or Burmese port hexes, and we can only activate Commonwealth and Chinese units and US air units, which was anyway going to be the case with SIAC. Anyway, so we are activating this one that has been turned back onto Kwai Beard's north because of the weather. We are activating the Chinese from here, and the 2 long-range bombers from Madras and Colombo and from Dhaka. So we are bringing that unit onto Calcutta, and because the road is still not constructed, it will take a long time to transport this armored brigade along the roads and reach the front of battle. So, due to some major mismanagement on our part, we cannot place that in Rangoon. We should have freed up some space by possibly moving this air unit out so that there are only 2 air or ground units, and so we can bring the armored brigade onto Rangoon and then we would be able to immediately move that. For example, with 3 operations it would be half and then 2, and this way it would be able to quickly reach Hanoi. So we shall use one activation to transport that. So the Chinese are moving, the long-range bombers are moving, as well as the Indian Corps onto Mandalay. Actually, it appears we're targeting the army unit in this case. This has been left from a previous activation, but we have now switched targets with our total of 12 attack factors onto the army. We can reduce it if we're all decently well, and then we can bring our armies to finish the job. So Japanese reaction to that is 6, which is again barely enough. No, this is not enough, because we have not entered any zone of influence this time. So this might very well be a surprise. Let's go for the bombing. This is 3, modified to 6 and then 7 because of the surprise and the 1943 modifier. So his army will suffer a loss. Our goal has been achieved. No further reaction on part of the Japanese, so we can go ahead with our post-battle movement. Now there's a rules debate on whether I could have placed the tank unit here in Rangoon, because the stack limits are checked at the end of the offensive. But this is a reinforcement, so this has to be placed within stacking restrictions, so no. So my units are moved back. Now, second Japanese card play, and he's playing Operation Haggle as an event. He can activate South or Southeast HQ only, with a logistic value of 6, but only air and ground units may be activated. This is one of the several cards in the Japanese deck that are very good for pushing onto the CBI, in cases where you have conquered Rangoon, for example, and are trying to finish off Burma or northern India, for example. These are the cards you would be seeking, but right now they are the defensive in this theater, and let's see how they manage that. So they're activating south, of course, and it's time for a grand rearrangement for their units. He's activating a whole lot of infantry units. Now he's activating Kaio, which is a mistake because he can only activate the ground and air units. Also this brigade and Nachi at Singapore. The Korean army moves to Hanoi strategically, so this can put up some strong defense there and be a final nail in the coffin for our dreams of an expansion. We've got this army from Shilashap moving on to Bangkok. The 2nd Brigade and Nachi moving to Tainan, which I guess we have to remind him is not legal. Then the army from Medan is moving to Singapore. You know, these are things that we can realistically do if he left ungarrisoned by, for example, expanding Hermes to place some zone of influence and land at any ungarrisoned spot, including Kuantan, which is a resource hex. Now Hong Kong is moving to Leyte, or actually decides against that. He's moving the army from Manila onto Leyte. Now as for this air force, this will cover the resource of Medan. And let's move ahead with the corrections. So the armored brigade is moved back to Rangoon. As we previously mentioned, it had to be deployed onto Dhaka and moved to Rangoon. Let's just not mind the extra Chinese unit that the module incorrectly sets here. There should be a 3 units limit. And then instead of the Nachi, which is not allowed to be activated, he's activating the one army from Balikpapan, which moves to Palau Islands to put some defenses here as well. And this one from Singapore is moving to Balikpapan. Now this air unit is moved to Hanoi, and let's see what we do about that. So in that case we use our Mao Tung card for operations. We are activating the SIAC headquarters, and we are slowly trying to make his forces dwindle with these long-range bombers. And this time from Rangoon we can reach Medan, which is solely protected by these air units. So if we clear that out, we can set the stage for a naval invasion here. See, with this hell lot of long-range bombers, all kinds of issues start to emerge for the Japanese. They have to defend Hanoi, defend their Kaio, defend their armies, defend Medan, and without zones of influence because of how stretched thin they currently are, we may amphibiously assault all these hexes and possibly create some beachhead for further expansion here, starting from the CVI. So all units committed here. These are the low-cost operations that will very likely achieve a surprise or will force him to expend some reaction cards, which is a win-win situation. And of course he's playing his code change card, he will not risk losing his elite air forces like that. He's activating South HQ, Nachi activates, this AD from Saigon also activates, also this one from Balikpapan. So this one will move to Singkawang and then Quantan to join the fight. Nachi will also join the fight. This one will also exit to Quantan. And we've got an 8 on our part, which is a full times result. Although this will have to just damage Nachi at this stage because it is full strength. He's rolling a 1 times result as well. So if you combine Nachi and these two air forces, he's up to 31, so 3 steps of damage onto our bombers. Scratch that, he also had that one, this is 40. So we lose 4 steps, 3 long range bombers are reduced and 1 is down for good. Nachi loses 1 step and he's moving it back to Singapore. Now this is his post-battle movement. He's also drawing a Japanese bonus card because of the Cold Chains reaction card. So he will be conducting his card play before my post-battle movement, which is Flight Instructors as an event. This is another 3 air replacement event for the Japanese. So yeah, at this stage he's more than happy to keep piling up replacements because he knows how desperate we are at starting to make progress and eliminate his units. So he can set us further back by placing more air replacements into the mix. So my post-battle movement. And then heroic repair as 2OC for operations. As we mentioned, we didn't mind those naval replacements earlier on, but right now we are more or less back in shape. So we would like to conduct more operations and make some good progress and make it now. So Southwest Pacific HQ, 2 efficiency rating plus 2 OC value for a total of 4 activations. We are activating the Marine Air Wing as well as the carrier Bellewood and Lexington, and we've also got the division from Biak. This one will be moved down. Now you will notice that the battle is taking place here, but I'm not moving the Marines in. I want to take full advantage of my low intel requirements because I have played a 2OC value card which has an intel value of 2, so I don't want to immediately bring my unit into his zone of influence. I want to force him to either expend the reaction card or roll for a 0 to 2 roll and possibly lose his air unit. This unit I am moving to Windham, hopefully to achieve some further successes by landing onto possibly Shilashap if it remains ungarrisoned, or another hex, possibly Talukbetung, who knows. Now as for the battle, we've got these 3 units participating. And because of how desperately he is on his part as well to defend these hexes from my progress of war, we are trying to utilize this distant location as a Japanese graveyard. We are very well positioned here with our ranged units, and whatever units he keeps bringing in, we will keep firing at. So his intel is a 4, which means this is a surprise. He will, however, be playing a Submarine attack card, which is regardless of the surprise condition. If he rolls a 0 to 4, he will deal us a naval unit step of casualties. This is before the beginning of the combat phase. So he's drawing a Japanese bonus card, and he's targeting the Wasp. He's failing, so our Wasp will be kept alive for now. So time for the raid. We eliminate the unit. Yay! No post-battle movement on our part, so we are keeping our well-positioned units here. So we're going ahead with his play. He's playing Operation Tsurugi as 2OC for operations. This is a good event to possibly hurt the American B-29s that are strategically bombing Japan in late 1945, who knows. So he correctly assumes he needs to stop reinforcing Kendari. So his perfect solution is to activate the South HQ and bring units to Makassar instead. He's also moving more air units to cover Miri, and Kaiyo moves to Hanoi. So that's it. As you may notice, the Japanese are not up for a whole lot of offensive operations at this mid-stage of the game. The ambushes are still in the deck for the Americans, and the air-naval combat superiority for the Allies is starting to get a bit too much. So they're just rearranging their units to play defensively and delay our advances because the clock is ticking for the Allies. However, we've got some reaction to that, which is the submarine attack darter days, which means we can make him lose some naval steps and draw a bonus card in the process. So submarine sent to Kaiyo. On a die roll of 0 to 4, like the 3 that we rolled, he's losing 1 naval steps. Any further damage would be forfeited. But okay, let's just sink Kaiyo with this 1 step. Usually this is a graveyard for Japanese ships if used earlier at turn 2 or 3 or 4 when they actually try to make some aggressive offensives in the Pacific. And if it is a full-scale battle with the American Navy and they happen to lose like 1 or 2 naval stacks before the combat, this could spell distraction, but we drew that a little bit too late for that. So let's seize this window. I'm playing the card Curtis LeMay at 3OC for operations. Now, because this is both a card that cannot be played as a military event and a high OC value one, this means this is the least useful card in our hand right now. It can neither achieve surprise or conduct a serious offensive. So we shall be using that for some sneaky purpose, which is activating the Anzac HQ with 4 activations, which will be the New Zealanders plus the Bunker Hill plus the Essex and the Bellewood. So what will we achieve by that is we're moving Essex here, we're moving Bunker Hill here, and Bellewood here. And this opens up a clear path of unneutralized zone of influence for the New Zealanders. We are all declaring 1 battle and only 1 battle because this is what is allowed by an OC card play. And our New Zealanders with their 15 hexes movement allowance can now do 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 and reach this hex which is Tan. So because Kaiyo was eliminated by our Darter Days submarine, we can seize this window before he reacts and create this path of unneutralized zone of influence by declaring a battle here and moving our naval units accordingly to neutralize his zones of influence along the way. And this clears the path for Hainan, which is now clear of enemy zones of influence. This is the only hex here that is ungarrisoned. The rest is Chinese coastline, which is garrisoned by Japanese divisions. But we can seize this one for free, for purposes of progress of war. So this is unusual but smart uses that we managed to find for our Curtis LeMay card, because we needed this 15 movement allowance from Biak. Although I'm not fairly positive that this one can withstand a Japanese counter onslaught onto Tan. We have no air naval units nearby that could assist, so he will be possibly eliminated. But this is a cool way to secure some progress of war if all goes well. So, 1 amphibious shipping point is used for that. We have a plethora of amphibious shipping points right now, but let's see if we can use those effectively. Well, actually, Jules could have PBM'd, but not in a way that he could prevent this kind of maneuver. So, his intel roll for this fight is 3, so he can react. And he's reacting by the South HQ, activating Yamato from Palau Islands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and it is barely in range of South HQ's activation range. So, also Davao and Batavia. So he's going all in with Yamato, with the Air Force, with the other Air Force from Philippines. Let's see how this battle eventuates. This is a good chance for him to sink all my carriers. He's got 78 and we got 38. We're rolling a 4 modified to 5, but this is still a half times result. And he's rolling a half times result as well. So 19 for us, which is just 1 step loss, although this can be applied to Yamato. And he's dealing a 39 times result, which means 14, 28, 38. He's all good. He can deal 3 steps of damage. So, all of Essex, Bunker Hill and Bellewood suffer a 1-step loss. And he's conducting his post-battle movement, while we opt to deal our step loss onto this elite air force in Batavia, not to Yamato. Usually, because it is really hard to deal a step of damage to Yamato, this is what we would prefer with 19 points of damage, but we want to reduce his air forces to dust as soon as possible, so that we can make our expansion here in Dutch East Indies. So again, usually the American strong theater is the Central Pacific, but in this weird and unusual game, our strength is anywhere but in the Central Pacific. Our strength is in the CBI and hopefully in Indochina. We want to keep pushing onto these beautiful resource hexes to reduce his hand and hopefully achieve a resource victory later on, and at the same time achieve a progress of war here. Also, his forces are spread too thin here, trying to impose some zone of influence onto all these hexes, so we can take down a lot of planes in the process. Now, post-battle moving, Bellewood to Kepang and the remnants of Bunker Hill and Essex to Kepang as well. Essex will move to Wewak actually, or Hollandia. So that's one more battle where our +1 made no difference. Now Jules' response is that technically the +1 only has an effect on a 20% of results, which is true if we consult the charts. Like, it only matters if upgrading the 2 onto 3 to make a quarter result onto a half result, or the 5 onto a 6 to make a half result onto a 1 times result. So yeah, in 1 out of every 5 battles, it is likely to make a difference in 1943, just keep that in mind. He's playing a card as a future offensive, so he's left with 2 more cards in hand, while we are left with 3 cards in hand. So next allied card play, we are playing Operation Oboe as an event. Logistic value of 5, but it can activate any air and naval units, but only Australian ground units. Let's see what we have prepared for that. We have prepared Anzac from Darwin, and we got the logistic value of 6, or a number of 6 activation actually. So we got the Australian Corps, as well as Warspite, Washington, Bunker Hill, Enterprise, Sangamon, and that's it. So Warspite is moving on to Balikpapan. With its attack factor of 14, it may possibly eliminate Nagato. Our Bunker Hill will be attacking this air force. Our ground unit will be amphibiously assaulting Bali, while accompanied by Bunker Hill. This is 2 more amphibious shipping points used, because this is an army corps. Then we got Washington also escorting this naval landing, as well as Enterprise and Sangamon. So actually what we are doing here is we're trying to negate his possibility of reacting with ground forces, because if we pin this down, this cannot react, and if we pin this down as well, this cannot react. So he does not have any ground units here that can be stacked with naval units and hopefully come, if you accept this one. So let's see how this all goes. His special reaction is a 6, which is enough to counter Oboe. So his intel will be a 3, so he can actually react. And he's activating the South HQ. So Bunker Hill is declared onto here, but it will switch targets if somebody enters physically the hex of Bunker Hill. So my purpose was to declare a battle, so if his special reaction fails, Bunker Hill would battle this unit. But even if he manages to react here, Bunker Hill will at least be helpful in this created battle. So he's activating an air unit from Apari and another one from Davao, as well as Shokaku from Leyte. So in that case, he's bringing all these guys here to possibly try and deter our landing. So battle A it is. Note that a question mark would be, why didn't I pin down this unit from Leyte? Because it could be moved stacked with Shokaku here. But if you notice closely, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hexes. He cannot reach an 11th hex because Operation Oboe is only a 2 OC value card, so just 10 movement allowance. So battle A it is, Warspite against Nagato. I roll an 8 and he rolls a 0, so Nagato is down for good. Battle B, he has not brought anything onto Bali physically, so Bunker Hill will indeed fight the Japanese Air Forces. I'm rolling a 2, he's rolling a 0. So in that case, this will make a difference for me. My 2 will be converted onto 3, which is a half times result. Which, guess what, makes no difference. Half result is unable to deal any damage to his 10 defense. So, Battle C, Sangamon plus Enterprise plus Washington for a total of 30 combat factors. And he's got 16 plus 16 plus the 14 of Shokaku for a total of 46 attack factors. I'm rolling a 2, which again is converted to 3, and he's rolling a 3, so half times result for both. Now we can thank our bonus, that's correct. So, we've got a 30, so we will possibly damage Shokaku by halving that damage. Now he will be using his 46 halved into 23 to damage our Washington. So is that enough to repel us? I guess yes, because in that case he is remaining with 41 and I am remaining with 22. So possible movement. Back to Winham, back to Kepang. So one more failed amphibious landing in our history. Washington is moved back to Biak. That was a disappointing result. We rolled well in all unimportant battles just to lose the Progress of War naval landing onto Bali Lombok after he barely makes it for special reaction. That's correct. Let's see what comes next. Now Japanese card play 6, 2 cards in hand, 1 in future offensive. He plays Western Force as 3 OC for operations. Usually these are the 3 cards that the Japanese want to draw early on to get some free control onto Dutch East Indies, eliminating the Dutch regiments and gaining the resource hexes for themselves. Now we will see some other usage as operations. He's making fun of this ability, which is he can place Japanese control marker in a hex that is within extended range of a Japanese air unit if this is unoccupied. So he definitely says he does not want more hexes that he will have to protect from Progress of War. So he's activating Ozawa. 1 AD is activated in Saigon. Also Yamato from Palau Islands, Shokaku at Summer later, and this army from Davao, as well as the Korean army from Hanoi, or not, the army from Hong Kong. So he's using 1 amphibious shipping point, 2 amphibious shipping points, 3. In order to, as expected, attack our New Zealanders at Tan. Now everything is thrown in, and we might have some ambush in hand from the Japanese point of view, but at least he's got a decent air naval force and a decent ground force to eliminate our New Zealanders and undo this little Progress of War that we managed to make. So reaction times. We are at least happy he did not have a 1 or 2 OC card for that. Now we may be able to react. So our intel is 8. So forget about reaction. We required a 5 or less. So this will be a complete surprise, which means our ground units will have to take the first step from the air naval combat. Yeah, what I'm finally saying here is that while the allies are usually the side that achieves the more surprises in an Empire of the Sun game, in this game maybe the Japanese have achieved more surprises than I have done. Let's see. So our division will suffer a step loss because of his tremendous naval combat factors. And now as for the ground combat, he's rolling a 3, which is elevated to a 7 because of his 2+2 dial modifiers. And we are rolling a 6, which is a 1 times result, which with an attack factors of 6 is insufficient. But if he had managed to react and brought a unit and hopefully he rolled less, we could have dealt some real damage onto his units and hopefully survived this ground combat. Anyway, our unit is eliminated, and the Tan hex of Hainan is again under Japanese control, which means, you guessed that, no Progress of War there. Down to 0 Progress of War hexes, all fired up to lose the game to political will because of not achieving Progress of War, yay! Now you will notice that the turns are starting to get lengthy enough now because of the many passes and reaction cards and 7 cards on each side and some stalling on both sides, because we have to gradually hurt the opponent's hand and reduce it and then do our best offensive. That's how an Empire of the Sun turn typically plays out at the mid stages. Early stages, it's all about Japanese aggression and making quick progress. Late stages is all about Allied aggression and trying to finish off the game. But the mid stages is where all the stalling happens. We try to burn the opponent's intercept cards with our surprises cards and prepare the ground for subsequent surprises and finishing off our objectives towards the end of the turn. So, we've got 2 cards and 3 ASPs remaining. Fun times. Let's see if we can capture 4 Progress of War hexes with these 2 cards. So now I am playing Joe Stilwell Perma Offensive as operations this time, because while we would much like to use Stilwell in the CBI as an event, we cannot so quickly grab our required Progress of War hexes. If our previous landings had been more effective, like at Bali or like defending Tan, then if we only required 2 Progress of War hexes, we might have been able to play Stilwell at the CBI, which is what we would like. Now we will have to play operations and hopefully achieve some Progress of War. So because of the many weathers, we cannot save that for future offensive, so let's just activate the Southwest Pacific HQ along with Bunker Hill, Bellewood. Bunker Hill will join this battle, Bellewood will join this battle. All this to pave the ground again for an amphibious landing. So because there are zones of influence all around, we have to keep these units occupied, bring a naval unit here, because if a naval unit moves, it has to declare a battle or move at a friendly port. So we're declaring a battle here, hopefully to deal some damage. We're declaring a battle here, where we cannot deal much damage so far, but at least we can move this unit here for the amphibious landing, for 1 more amphibious shipping point. And we can also move this unit here to possibly achieve this landing as well. Let's see how this goes. 5 amphibious shipping points have been expended. So if you're wondering what my plan is with these amphibious shipping points, we have 1 more remaining. So if we capture these 2 hexes, hopefully, if we are lucky, then this 1 amphibious shipping point could possibly achieve another Progress of War hex, and the other one we could achieve by overland advance, by moving on foot here. So this is my plan for securing the 4 Progress of War hexes, hopefully, and let's see how this goes. So let's see, he is allowed to fail some intel rolls at times. Let's see if he does. Now everything is on 50-50, because if you noticed, Joe Stilwell is a 2 OC value card with a 2 intel value. So because we have entered the Zoe, if he rolls a 0 to 4, he reacts. If he rolls a 5 to 9, he does not react. The thing is though, I'm only allowed 1 battle hex on an OC offensive, so we shall be trying to fix that. So no battle in Batavia. My Bunker Hill will be joining the battle at Surabaya. So time for his reaction. Special reaction for here. He rolls a 9, which means no reaction on the Taluk Betung. We will secure this one. Special reaction for Sheila Shap. A 9, again, we will be doing this landing. And then he's rolling a 3, which means he will be able to react. Now, to be honest, I would prefer that he fails the reaction, so even if he declares these hexes, he will be caught by surprise, unable to react. And this would be better than these 2 9s that he rolled. He succeeded at the crucial one roll. So he will be activating the South HQ. This AD from Batavia, plus this one from Quantan, this one from Saigon, and that's it, 3 activations. So all of those will be joining this battle, and although they are reduced step units, they are protected by this one full strength unit, so he will probably not be losing his elite air forces. So 17 vs 39, we are rolling a nice 0, and he's rolling a sweet 6, which is a 1 times result. So let's say goodbye to all our carriers here. I think I have chosen the worst historical timeline for the American Navy. I don't think such a disgrace would be tolerated in any other historical timeline, but that's who we are. We have captured 2 progress of war hexes. However, he will be post-battle moving his air units and take those out of supply, both of them. And I cannot PBM to the ports. He's making a good note here. I did not have to commit all my units onto the battle. One of the carriers could have been allowed the move onto the hex of the naval landing. Now let's review how this works. If you move a naval unit, you have to either move to a friendly port, or make sure it participates in a battle, or help a naval landing succeed. However, for that to happen, the ground unit should first be in that space. So I could have declared the battle here, projected my Zoe here, which would have allowed the infantry to amphibious land through a line of unneutralized Zoes, hopefully, and then I could have moved my naval unit in order to assist the landing. However, if he rolled the special reactions, this would make my naval unit vulnerable. So he's trying a desperate offensive against my units now. So Vice Admiral Kondo is what will be used, a nice card for earlier on in the game. Now this will be used as operations for a lower intelligence condition roll. So Ozawa will be activated along with some 5 units. This will be Yamato from Palau Islands, also this one army from Leyte, also this one army from Tan, this one air unit from Saigon, and Shokaku. So he's using some amphibious shipping points, 2 of those, his 2 remaining. The thing is, he's got an unusually high amount of ASPs left because I have only achieved the submarine roll twice in these 7 turns. So he should not have that much in a usual game, but this game is an exception in various aspects. So he's trying his amphibious assault onto Taluk Betung to put the final nail in the coffin for our ground units for good. He's also using his air units and Shokaku as well as Yamato to attack here, along with 1 more ground unit. Now I am lamenting how lucky it was for him to roll the crucial intelligence roll, and how I could have been able to manage that better. But even if I had managed those differently, in that case I would weaken my forces and they would not be able to deal a step of damage. Anyway, the thing is, he achieved that 1 times roll. Otherwise, even on a half result, I would have 1 carrier surviving, and this would be able to return to Shilashap and provide supply. Now the thing is, I don't know if this was intentional on Jules' part to make up for my mismanagement, but this proved to be possibly the biggest mistake of the game, because if you notice closely, I'm checkmated right now. I only have 1 card available, and all these units are out of supply. So this one could have possibly moved here and grabbed the hex by overland advance, and this one could have moved here or here to grab another hex by overland advance. But because they are out of supply, I cannot use those in this very card play. So there is no way I would achieve my progress of war at this stage. But because he's launching this offensive, there might be a chance that we do this. So let's roll the intel. We need a 5 against Vice Admiral Kondo because he has not entered any zone of influence of ours. And we roll, guess what, a 5. Now let's see whether we use the Anzac or the Southwest Pacific. Actually, that's an incorrect question because Anzac is out of range for this battle hex. So we're not wasting any ASPs to use units to possibly interfere with this ground combat. Now we are activating all these units, but this is incorrect because Anzac is not activatable as noted. So we're bringing in Essex and Warspite, which requires exactly this number of hexes to move it in, and then Wasp. We are rolling a 4 for the Japanese and a 3 for the Allies here, so it is a half result for both. He's got a 38 with his 3 units, which is halved to 19, and my 40 factors for these 4 units is halved to 20. So I'm remaining with 13, and he's remaining with 29 total, which is amazing. Means his amphibious assault fails, and we're post-battle moving. Now it's time that Jules corrects me because Anzac cannot react to this battle. This is a few hexes too far, as we noted ourselves. We can fix that by doing something similar with Sangamon instead of Warspite. So again, the result is that he fails the amphibious assault by keeping the rolls we did. So he's returning to Batavia, hoping to deter our possible expansion from Shilasapon to Batavia. And he's also returning to Saigon and Bangkok and later. So if we were to redo our previous offensive and try to do it legally, I did have one more activation with the Southwest Pacific. So I would have brought in the Sangamon and the Wasp. So yeah, we've still got the same number of factors. Instead of the 14 of Warspite, we've got the 6 plus 8, which is again 14. Actually, we could even have brought Washington onto this fight, because this is a 3OC offensive. So again, we can flip Yamato with our 40, halved to 20, and he can do 19, halving his 38. So Sangamon will absorb these losses and be eliminated. And we're remaining with 34 factors, if you count all those 4 units. And he's remaining with 29. So in that scenario, we decided to flip his Yamato in order to lower his attack factors for this air naval combat. Still, his amphibious landing fails. Now let's contact our PBM again, and we're just redoing his post-battle movement priorities. And we're moving ahead to our 8th card play. Now, this was an issue I had been very much struggling with, to go for Palembang and Banca, or Palembang and Batavia. But now with all these forces here, Batavia is out of the question. We have to go for Palembang on foot from Teluk Betung, and for Batavia for a possible amphibious landing. So we will now be going for these 2 resource hexes, which can make all the difference in the world. Because if we drop his resources from 12 to 10, then this will be 5 cards drawn. Couple that with the submarines, it will be 4 cards drawn. Which means maybe he does not draw this political will Japanese card. And maybe we even get to do some crucial last turn card plays for surprises and stuff. And this makes our job much easier. Actually, we are more or less back in the game if we manage to get those resources while at the same time achieving our progress of war. Now the question is how we achieve this. He's out of amphibious shipping points, so he cannot react by ground forces, so I do not have to do stuff like pinning in place this ground unit. So I can just bring a ground unit here and win the ground combat, because there will be no enemy ground units. So even if he brings as many as 80 factors of air naval units onto the fight, he can just deal 1 point of damage and then my ground unit will secure Palembang. Now, the question is how we secure Bangka. Since he has no ground units to react with, or scratch that, he's got these marines, but that's about it, because he can move those by organic transport. Other than that, we just have to focus on winning the air naval combat. So we're playing this card. And now there's a debate whether I can play that as an event or it has to be played as operations. If you read the card text, if there's at least 1 Japanese occupied Alaskan hex, this card must be played as an event, okay, or it must be discarded. But if there is no Japanese occupied Aleutian Islands hex, this card may be played as an OC. So, can this be played as an event if there is no Aleutian Island hex or not? Probably not, but we did not know that at the time. So we struggled with the decision of playing this as an event or operations. So Operation Vengeance was indeed very important by eliminating Yamamoto and the Japanese army here, because otherwise this card will be trashed and would have to be trashed and we would have lost the game. But now we've got a chance. So this card is usable now. If we use it as operations, we have a 50% chance he fails the intel, or a 50% chance he fails the reaction roll for Banka. Or we can try to bring our forces with an event and try to eliminate Palembang, for example. We've got 6 activations with Operation Sandcrab-Cottage if played as an event, and he can have a maximum of 3 activations because of its 2 operation value and the 1 efficiency rating of South HQ. So the brigade activates, Enterprise activates, Essex activates, Washington, then the Wasp from Kepang, and the Marine Division from Shilashap. The brigade will move to secure this overland. The Marine Division will be landing to Bangka by spending our last amphibious shipping point. Now in that case, we could be using all these units to assist our landing, but this would increase the die roll range for reaction because we have played the card as an event. Or we can just opt the card and just focus on the Palembang battle. You know, I would be allowed one battle hex, I would attack Palembang and let these marines rely on the chance that he fails the intel roll. So we can either rely on his 50% chance rolls to achieve the surprise at Bangka, or lower that even further. So if we play this as an event, there's a 70% chance he reacts, but in that case he would have to win the air-naval combat to prevent the landing, so that's why we are bringing more units, which we would otherwise be unable to bring if the card was played as an operations, because we would have less activations. So with all these activations, will he be able to deter our naval landing? Now I did have some plans to cut this off supply by placing some Zoids here and there, but because I will have to capture Palembang, which is not a port hex, and I don't have any airplanes to bring here, and our only zones of influence will be placed here at Taluk at best, so we will not really be able to project an unneutralized Zoi onto this line and hopefully render his units out of supply. So the thing is, I'm now starting to thinking, if the turn ends like this and I capture Palembang, I will be the first one to be bringing in reinforcements. So maybe I can then bring my planes onto Palembang and cut these units off supply. Wouldn't that be really cool? Who knows? Tying up all these units, Yamato, the air, these two armies in Batavia without supply. Still, if he places an air unit here in Kuantan, this would again project Zoi onto these hexes, so this would undo my plan. Well, after that much overthinking, I got back onto my senses and realized that there's a hefty lot of air units that could be activated and react to this battle. So we would be doomed if trying to rely on our brute force. We have to actually try to play it sneaky and go for the operations. So let's go for the surprise. Sandcrab-Cottage will be played for operations, for activations then. So these units will be deactivated, and we only have these 4 units. The ground unit moving here, the ground moving assaulting here, the marines, and then 2 more units. So the 4th activation won't really make a difference. We just need Essex to possibly achieve some surprise and eliminate this air unit. So I decided in favor of strategically moving the Marine Air Wing to off track from Amboina, so that I possibly relocated here as reinforcements and try to project some Zoi, because you know, all the money is here in Indochina. We want to deny his resources, and besides that, we want to make our comeback onto Malaya and possibly grab these 2 hexes and achieve some political will gains by liberating Malaya from the Japanese. These are things that can slowly be attempted as the game goes late, while it was unthinkable earlier on. But if we manage to deal enough casualties, of course we cannot go for Philippines anytime soon, or Dutch East Indies. It requires a few more resource hexes to grab, but we can realistically hope we can liberate Malaya soon enough for our political will to be saved. So we've got a 75% chance of achieving the landing because he has to roll a 0 to 4 twice, and then we got a 50% chance of achieving surprise and eliminating this unit and cause some supply issues. Let's roll. So Jules is again correcting me, the event couldn't be played anyway, so it's a good thing that we ended up with the operations. So special reaction for Bangka. He fails that. We are good to go. We will get Bangka and our 4th progress of war hex. And intel, he rolls a 5, so at last we get lucky and achieve some surprise. So Palembang fight, we're rolling a 7, more than enough to eliminate this unit. So 4 progress of war hexes, well done. Now PBM times, turn goes to 8. We have no attrition so far, And the reason is, as mentioned earlier, I couldn't move a unit here because this is not a port, so my zone of influence here is neutralized by these air units. So these units are not out of supply, not that they would take any losses because they are reduced, but just saying. So no political will changes either. Reinforcements for the Americans. We've got all these beefy guys and now things finally get interesting. New Jersey moves to Tung, Franklin onto Chilashap, Intrepid onto Kepang and Bataan onto Biak. So we have identified which front is doing the best. This is the Indo-Chinese one. We ignore the Central Pacific. Now the Marine Air Wing is placed onto Palembang, which temporarily cuts off this supply. This will be our delayed reinforcements for next turn. And all the rest is going to Europe. We are entering turn 8 and all these US Army units will be going to Europe because of our roles. We will just be seeing them in 1945 after they have possibly cleared the whole of Normandy and France, who knows. Maybe if they take Berlin, they then come to reinforce the Pacific theater a bit. Now, let's see how we do in this game. We will enter the crucial year of 1944. It's time we make our comeback. Or maybe not. We'll see you in the next one.